Rise and shine, wild ones. It's Bernadette. I'm here with your Pick a Card Daily Tarot reading for Sunday, December 27th, 2020. Oh, I can't wait to share this spirit animal with you. Of all the animals so far that I've worked with or read with or have in the ARC deck, I have to say this animal is probably the most underestimated in terms of the power, and even the volume of the lessons and the medicine and the energy that it brings, which is in itself a really big lesson. So I've got my purple on. It's Crown Chakra Day. The sun is bringing all the warmth in so we can have clarity and we can relax and just take a deep breath, because that's what this animal asks you to do. Today's spirit totem and power animal is the sheep. And through the readings that I've done so far, one of the things that I haven't really talked about that I could remember having talked about in any video is when an animal shows up for you on whatever day at whatever time, it's really important to also consider like the euphemisms or the sayings, that kind of thing about that animal. So when we talk about sheep, we hear that, most people are sheeple. They're followers, not leaders. We've all heard about the black sheep of the family, go in like a lion, come out like a lamb, just all of those sayings. And they're all tumbling around in my head today. So one of the first things I would like to share with you is just take a minute at some point today and maybe just look up like sayings about sheep or quotes about sheep or rams or goats. They kind of all fall-ish within the same category. But within that, I'm being told that for the collective, the wild ones, something's gonna resonate very heavily with you. Not heavy like, oh my gosh, but heavy like whammo. And you'll be like, oh my God, there's the answer, right? There's the clue. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is, I get a lot of email, you guys asking me about how I come to know the symbolism and meaning of these animals, or the tarot cards, or the this or the that. Tarot cards, that's a man-made thing, right? We make up the symbolism. We talk about the symbolism. We hand the stories and all of that stuff down through generation after generation after generation. When it comes to animals, how I gather my information is a ton of research. I've got a jillion books on what this culture, their myths and their stories and their legends, and this culture and their stories and their legends. And then I've got these 2 giant volumes by Joseph Campbell that they're the most fascinating things ever. And he's the hero's journey guy, in case you don't know him. And I take a look at, what other people have to say about their symbolism and meaning. And then, listen, I'm a very simple person. None of my past boyfriends would tell you that, or probably even any of my friends, but and definitely not my husband's. But I really am pretty simple. And I figured, well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So for me, because I grew up a country girl and I've been on a bajillion farms, I've worked with a bajillion animals, I just take a look at what they do, what they're like, what habits do they have, what are traits that they have that other animals don't, kind of what's unique about them, or really what's the same about them. And when it comes to sheep, lambs, goats, ewes, at all, one of the biggest things about these animals, now sheep not so much as goats, but they're very sure-footed animals. And so I always say, if you're really looking to be on sure footing, call in sheep energy, call in goat energy. Goat really more than sheep. But sheep will give you the ability, if you tap into that part of yourself where you align that part of your own spirit that is sheep. You guys, they are such underestimated creatures. First of all, they spook really easily. And you've got to be around them a lot. You've got to kind of raise them from babies. They're not like other animals where even in the wild, they'll come up to you and be curious. Having said that, let me say this. This is one of the bigger messages that sheep wants to get to you today. So I was in England with a good friend of mine a couple of years ago, and we got lost. We were Americans trying to drive in England, and when we were in the Cotswolds, and it is nothing but sheep farm in the Cotswolds. And we were just driving down one long trail after another long trail on dirt roads, you guys, dirt roads. Okay, lost as we could be, no cell reception. So I was like, oh my gosh. And we turned around and it was like a scene out of like Downton Abbey or, Pride and Prejudice or, one of the other Jane Austen greats. And there were just this beautiful, bucolic, lush green land with their gorgeous brick fences and these sheep that just looked like the whitest sheep I've ever seen. Because, listen, it's not like these sheep go, sheep that I've worked with in America, they don't go to the salon and get their hair did and get their nails did. They're white. Some of them are white, but they're dirty. They're out in the farm, right? They're out in the field. So I was like, ooh, let's get some, I want to go meet these sheep and see like what they have to tell me and whatever. So me, right, the animal whisperer, I walked very gently in there and I stood there for just a minute. And of course they turned around to look at me, right? And I don't know what, I know better than this. I don't know why I did it. I just very gently started walking towards them with that, "Aw, hi baby, blah, blah." Well, that was it. One turned and looked at me and his or her eyes got that big. Off she goes or he goes through the field. And the rest of them went whoop, right, just hauled butt behind that sheep. And my friend laughed at me so bad. She was like, I should have been taking video of this the whole time. What shows what you know about animals, right? But what I should have done, if I'd had the time, I had the time. I just didn't have the presence of mind. I don't know what I was thinking. I guess I was excited because they were English sheep, right? I should have just sat down in the field and been quiet. And it wouldn't have taken 5 minutes for those sheep to come up and poke around me and sniff me and see what I'm all about. And if I'd have sat dead still, I'd have had the greatest sheep experience of all time. But oh no, I had to open my big yap and move in too soon. So that's a big lesson for today is don't open your mouth and move in too soon. Don't even however gently you are going to approach a situation or approach a person, don't. Just sit with it, and eventually, sooner than you think, they're going to come to you. And then whatever this is, you're going to be able to figure out, to work out, to put together. It's going to be awesome. The other thing about sheep is their pupils are rectangular, and that gives them the ability to see almost 360 degrees. Humans can only see 155 degrees. So they see a lot better around them, their periphery, which gives them the added symbolism of being able to see things from a broader perspective. And that's been a really big thing this week, as I thought through the past readings of the week, is just taking a step back, especially when the Hanged Man came in with his little upside down self. And he because he was in that position, he could see things from a different perspective, and that was ultimately going to be very helpful. Now, having said that, he was upside down. And that's fine. Eventually, he would get tired of the blood rushing to his head, and he'd right himself, and he'd go on about his merry business. If a sheep ends up on their back, they can't get up. They are physically incapable of rolling over and getting up. So be sure that when you're seeing things from a different perspective, you don't go so far down the rabbit hole that you're not able to get yourself up. And if that perspective doesn't serve your purpose, that you can't pivot and get to the perspective that does serve your purpose. So there's another thing about sheep. They're very, very associated with innocence and childlike behavior and just very gentle. And they are, unless you're a ram and you're mad and they ram you because they're relentless. They'll keep coming back and coming back and coming back and coming back. Remember that in the Chinese zodiac, sheep or ram is part of the 12 signs of the Chinese zodiac. In that, some of us, if we're born in that year and we're like a wood ram or a metal ram or a fire ram or sheep or whatever, there are all these other little elements that come into play, like the literal elements, or metal, fire, water, and wood, right? Okay, so you might want to look that up depending on what year you're born, the month, the day. See if maybe you were born in the Chinese the Chinese New Year of that particular animal, right now in particular the sheep or the ram. And even if you weren't born like in the year of, your birthday might correlate to that particular zodiac sign. I'm a triple Scorpio in astrology, Western astrology, But in the Chinese zodiac and the Native American zodiac and the um, Celtic zodiac, I'm a snake. Just straight up, and that's the animal that correlates to Scorpio, right? So take a look at that and see if there's any kind of information that you can glean from that for yourself. I want to bring this up because again, boy, we can learn a lot from animals. You know, in every animal species, homosexuality is like a thing. It's a very accepted thing. It's part of nature. It's part of what it is. But for some bizarre reason, books, you know, when you look up facts of things online or whatever, they apparently really want you to know that about sheep. What that brings me to is about living your life authentically and feeling very natural, being who you are, who you're attracted to, what you want, who you don't want. And that may be same sex, it may be different sex, it may be multiple sexes, it may be all kinds of things. But of all the animals that you would think that would symbolize that as just as a helpmate to help those of you that, you know, maybe you're afraid to come out, maybe, you know, maybe your family would like go buck wild, I don't know. But if you're needing courage about being your authentic self, if there's a truth about yourself that you want to tell, that you're really afraid that other people aren't going to receive at all or receive poorly, but it's really in your spirit to live your life, not out loud, but just not be hiding from anybody about anything for any reason. Sheep is who you want to call in. Sheep is who you want to call into your life. Now, when we take a look at some of the other, you know, spirit, totem, power animal meanings regarding sheep, I want to call very special attention to their horns, because anytime you've got a horned animal or antlers, that's always like an antenna to for downloads of a maybe a little bit higher, or not higher, but more clear way. Those antenna, and especially on a day like today, when today is the crown chakra day, right? That's going to help you really bridge that gap between you and divine source when there are messages that you want to get. Now, when you are working with sheep energy or ram energy, and you are working with the horns, remember there are I don't remember the type, but the sheep that have the spiraled horns, y'all, it's a perfect spiral, right? I mean, if you have done any deep dive, well, you didn't have to deep dive into it. It's one of the most common, you know, symbols in sacred geometry is the spiral. And there, oh my God, it correlates to number 12, which is completion. We're in the 12th month of the year. We're coming to the end of a cycle. Everything is very smooth. It's very cyclical in nature. That wheel is going to keep spinning around and around. I could do this laundry list for the next half a day, right? But there's something about the horns, and the reason that I will tell you guys that, and a lot of you have written me and asked me like about my process, like, do you hear, do you see, do you taste, do you smell, do you whatever? I do them all, just depending on, you know, what message is coming through. I mean, when the messages come through from the other side, it's not like a sushi menu. I don't get to choose how I want it to come through. Like, I gave a reading to a gal here just recently, and the very first thing that happened when I connected with her, I felt like behind my eyes and in my head, I had to take a deep breath and move that pain out of my space because it was excruciating. And of course, the first thing I asked her is, have you had, or someone who's passed on the other side, a disease of the brain, a disease of the head, a traumatic brain injury? I just went down. She goes, yeah, my best friend just died of brain cancer, like not even a year ago. And then whammo bammo, her friend started giving all of this information. So I will tell you that when you are tapping into energies and you are really looking to develop your psychic and mediumistic and shamanic journeying capability, if I knew then what I know now, right? I would have started out teaching people using animals. I would have. It's the much easier entree into receiving the messages and being sure that you know that you know that you know. On another day, somebody might show up and I might see a visual in front of my head. In this same reading, I kept seeing a gal stand there and pointing to her head and then pointing to this other person's head, pointing to her head and pointing to this other person's head. And then I saw this. And I was like, is there a story there about your hair? Sure enough, just the day before, she'd gotten her hair cut and there'd been this whole big to-do in her mind about, should I cut it short? Should I keep it long? Should I this? Should I that? But in that instance, rather than feeling it physically, I saw it. I saw this gal on the other side doing this, right? Okay. And it's different every time. So sheep can really help you. It has to do with the horn thing, right? The getting the messages and the spiral and the divine number 12. And okay. Sheep can be a really great helpmate for that, especially to help you go into all of that work gently. And I just feel like so many of you are being called to pursue something in the spiritual vertical, the spiritual lane that has to do with, you know, energy healing or readings, or I don't know. I can't say. I mean, when I started these daily readings like 3 months ago, and I've never felt it as strongly as I do today. Like if I could like personally stand in front of each one of you and just like grab your face and go, look, you're being called. And you may not be being called to be like a professional reader, but maybe you work in a situation. Well, it doesn't really matter whatever situation you work in. You know, if you're a sous chef, if you're a beautician or a cosmetologist, or you know, maybe you work at the sanitation department, or there's something calling you to really ramp up your psychic abilities. Okay, I've said enough about that, but there you have it. Okay. The bighorn sheep. Lord, why couldn't I remember that? Bighorn sheep with the big horns, Bernadette. Dirt. Okay. So I want to go back to the sure-footing thing. So sheep and goats only need about 2 to 3 square inches to be able to get a really firm foothold. So when you feel, y'all, last week, all I could do was just hang on for the ride and hope I didn't get bucked off that horse, because last week was a wild stallion. It just was a wild stallion, and all I could do was just pray not to get bucked off and roll down the cliff. I've been able to take a step back and take a breath today, but it's important that you know that for you to gain firm foothold, you only need that much space, and the ability to know that that's all the space that you need, to have a confidence in yourself that if somebody just gives you 2 or 3 little inches, or you see that 2 or 3 little inches, you put your little hoof on that and you climb one little thing at a time and you will get there, right? It's just so important, because sheep, they can be about, but generally they're about a flow. They're about a gentleness. They're about a quietness. They're about they know all the amazing things they are. They may not know they're amazing, but they know all the things that they are. So you've got an animal that looks so fluffy and so cute and so sweet. They get really underestimated for how fierce they can be and is smart. I gotta say, honestly, I was shocked to learn this once upon a time in my life. So pigs are the smartest barnyard or farm animal. Cows come a real close second. And then sheep are known to run right there with cows and be as smart as they are. They can recognize like 50 faces of other sheep for up to 2 years. There's all of this crazy research about them. And that can be really, they always say, here's another saying, you got to watch out for the quiet ones. I know you've heard that, and that absolutely applies to sheep. So today, if you are feeling underestimated, sheep is a four-legged peoples. Sheep is a really good helpmate for you, that you don't need anybody else's approval. You don't need anybody else to know what you're capable of, unless, like your life depends on it or your salary depends on it or whatever, in which case you got to figure it out. But maybe this is a call that you might be underestimating. You might be underestimating yourself, or you might be underestimating some other people. And maybe today is day to take a look at that. So that's a lot about sheep, and I hope that was helpful. Oh, I hope this weekend right after the holidays has been great. We're going to be headed into the new year, and that is just going to bring, I don't even know what kind of energy and electricity and everything that's going to bring, because there are so many high hopes for 2021, and rightly so. And we've got to keep that hope alive. We've got to keep sending out the, it's not like we're asking for it. I would invite you to say, I'm commanding the universe to do my will, and this is how it's going to be. It's going to be like this for me. It's going to be like this for everybody else who wants it like this. Aho. Or so mote it be, or whatever your phrase is. Me, I'm a country girl. I'm like, hell yeah, right? Okay, that's our spiritual saying down here. Hell yeah. So just keep that thought with you. Keep that mantra going inside of you, and keep sending that out, sending that out. And I just know as we cruise into the new year, we really will be cruising. Na, na, na. I love you guys. Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to pick up your copy of the Arc Animal Tarot and Oracle deck. And as always, do it quietly this time, but stay wild.